Today we're going to talk about fighting off the wall or a vertical surface. Oftentimes in martial arts, we will study our mechanics in open space on the mat. Not necessarily against different surfaces, but it's important to do so because we don't always get to choose where we're going to be when we have an exchange. Sometimes it's an open space, sometimes it's going to be against vertical surfaces. Often I will include corners, both inward corners and outward corners on this list because they're everywhere. Everywhere we go as human beings, generally there's going to be a vertical surface somewhere. A common one we train on are automobiles. Statistically, there's a lot of violence that will happen in and around cars. This is one of the reasons we do so. The only drawback to that is you can damage your car. So it's good to have a good solid training surface to train these ideas on. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is just what we call surface engagement. In other words, how to violently or aggressively engage a surface. Whether we choose to do it or we don't, someone else is trying to make us engage that surface violently. Okay, for surface engagement, one of the things I want to avoid is being flat on the surface. This is the same thing for me when grappling. I don't want to be comfortable flat on my back. The more surface area that I have, either on the ground or on a vertical surface, the more contact, the more that surface will slow me down in my movement. So I want to limit it as much as possible. One of the first things we look at is to engage the surface with the edge of the body. So the knife edge of the body engages the surface, not the flat. So whether I am choosing to engage the surface or I'm having assistance from someone that wants to use this against me, my goal when I interact with it is to land on a blade, not flat. This limits my ability to move and starts to limit the mechanics that I can create. The less movement I have, the less power that I can create to give back to the threat. In order to get a feel for these mechanics, we'll often in class have someone pin us against the wall. So they'll pin us against the wall. My goal, like we said earlier, is to have a bladed position. I also want to be able to curve the body or curve the spine. This connects the hip and the shoulder line. So if I rotate, they are connected. So if I'm able to produce rotating energy with my hips, I can make it transfer up my body so that I could use it against them. All right, the next thing we'll take a look at is the mechanics on the surface. Just as we spoke earlier in open space, you'll study the mechanics of your basics and how you can use contact with the earth to produce power to give to the threat. The same thing here. If all you've ever done is train open space mechanics, when you're placed in a scenario, especially under stress, you're going to try to get back to what you know. You try to get off the wall in order to get to a mechanical position that you're comfortable with and that you've trained. So you want to spend just the same amount of time training your mechanics out of position, in this case on a wall. So one of the first ones we take a look at is rotative mechanics against the wall. There are two options that I can do this with contact on the wall, and the first one is the shoulder line. You see, I'm not marrying the whole body, the hips. If I've landed bladed, it's just my ability to rotate the body. This can also be done on the hips, shoulders, the hip line, shoulder. Once we've become familiar with this, we want to take these mechanics and we'll translate them into whatever striking basics you are training currently. Could be a fundamental jab cross. Since we assume close quarter combat in this situation, like what you saw when I was pinned against the wall originally, I like a lot of the shielding and the elbows from Kizi fighting method. One of them they teach is a direct elbow like that. They do it inside the frame, which is nice because there's multiple connections to the body. That makes it sturdy. My hands are up. It protects my head if something's coming in. And with the rotative energy behind it, it can create a lot of power. All right, this is one of the ways we'll train this concept inside of the academy. So the student can get familiar with the basic mechanics, the rotative energy, the shoulders, the hip line. Go ahead. Once they're comfortable with that, they can put in more of their longer range weapons like the jab cross. Then we could go into some of the mid-range weapons. For instance, the direct elbow we were showing earlier. All right. And of course, you could always put a cherry on top of this by plugging in some type of ram attack at the end of it. So we've engaged the surface. We've looked at some of the basic mechanics that you can do against the surface to create rotational energy and produce destructive force. The next thing is disengaging the surface. Several ways to do it. This is probably the one I use the most often. And it comes right out of the shoulder rock that we were talking about earlier. As I'm going back to this side, one thing I will do is if the shoulder's forward, I'll open it backwards like that. Open it backwards. This is as I rock to this side. So if I rock, it moves me off the wall. It allows me to launch off the surface. So I have the basic shoulder ride, and then I'll launch off the surface with that. Same thing on that side. Generally, when we play this drill, we will exit in two basic ways in the beginning. One is I'll go toward the potential threat. If I had someone here holding mitts, or I go outward. Maybe I'm trying to go around them to escape. So basically those two patterns, inward or out, exiting to the side. Okay, so that'll give you some of the fundamentals that we start with for surface engagement or fighting off of a vertical surface or a wall. And again, it could be any vertical surface because those types of things could happen in an engagement. And you want to know how to navigate the world around you and not just standing in open space. A lot of this material I was originally introduced to in Kizi fighting method. One of the unique things about Kizi is the way it will laboratory different environments. We'll commonly get together with the guys and we will pick a topic much like this and we will study the topic. And if there's areas that we don't understand, we'll drill it, we'll test it out. Sometimes we might spend months working on material out of a seated position, out of a laying position, because we do all of those positions against this surface as well. We'll commonly take it out in the parking lot, park two cars close to each other, and then we'll train between those two vehicles because that's reality. Okay guys, if you like the content that you are seeing on the channel, please give us a like and subscribe and share us with your friends. It helps the channel grow. Also, if you have questions, a lot of the videos we're making is based on the questions that you give us. Please send them. Let us know what you'd like to see.